in the aged, India's like that. India's got what they call the youth dividend.
Yeah.
So you have got a.
I think we'll start because we are already live on YouTube.
I'll put on the. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just send you the
Yeah, yeah.
link to that.
I will admit, I think all those who are in the waiting room. Okay. So I will just admit all of them.
He's got it on YouTube.
Yeah, he has it on YouTube. Yes.
Not Facebook.
Avinash, I'm sending you the link on.
Yes, I got that.
WhatsApp.
Send me on WhatsApp also.
WhatsApp
Yes,
as well.
yes, yes,
So it's easier to forward.
yes.
Derek, don't forget to give me that. I need to send that off.
Yeah, I'll just do it. It's not yet reached. I stopped to do all this. When I reach, I'll.
I think we'll start, sir, because I think it's
Whatever,
yeah,
up to you.
it's 10:05. So let us start so that there's no worries. Well, good morning, everyone, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here on World Alzheimer's Day for this very interesting program where we're going to talk about critical and ethical issues in dementia. I am your host and moderator for the day, Dr. Avinash D'Souza. I am a consultant psychiatrist from Mumbai, and I'm also an international faculty with the UNESCO Chair of Bioethics. This program is a culmination of the efforts of the UNESCO Chair of Bioethics and the Alzheimer's Related Disorders Society of India. We have with us our two panelists for the day. Our first panelist is joining us all the way from Australia is Professor Dr. Russell D'Souza. He is the director and head of education of the International UNESCO Program in Bioethics. He also heads the Asia Pacific division for the same. He's also the dean of the International Institute of Organizational Psychological Medicine that works in the realm of psychological medicine at the workplace in over 7 countries. We're very happy to have you here, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you here, and we will be coming back to you very soon. Our second panelist today is Madam Vidya Shenoy, and Madam Vidya Shenoy is the Secretary General of the Alzheimer's Disorders Society of India, the national the national head, and she's also part of she heads the Mumbai chapter of the Alzheimer's Related Disorders Society of India. That's where I know her. To start off, sir, we come to you, and as a psychiatrist first, and also someone who is an authority in the realm of ethics, what do you think are the major issues that concern us with regard to dementia, and why is dementia so important?
Well, first, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to join all of you here on this important day, World Alzheimer's Day. As you know, I'm talking to you from Melbourne, Australia, and in this country, we have a large aging population, and this is a big issue. This is a big issue. In fact, in most of the world, but certainly in this, there is at the moment a Royal Commission on looking at AIDS, dementia and AIDS care and so forth, and particularly looking at some of the areas that you already are talking about, the elder abuse and so many other issues. Why is it important? Because I guess today we are the importance from there are two parts to this. One is what is the care that there is the patient who has dementia and Alzheimer's and so forth. But a very important part of another portion is the caregivers and how much is they are contributing to society in terms of giving care, and in that process, the morbidity and so forth that they face. Now, from an ethical perspective, there are a number of issues that come up, right from the very simple, important thing is access. We have shortage of everything. There's large demand. So are we? This keeps coming up, particularly in the COVID period, where one of the issues that's come up about distributed justice in terms of beds, in terms of ventilators, in terms of all these issues. How are we going to, if we have a shortage, how do we decide? And will there be some amount of discrimination because you're old age, dementia or senile dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever? So these are very important issues, but I think there are several more issues into probably looking at the treatments, at the managing of this. How much are we willing to spend, to invest in research for improving, preventing before and managing. One's treating in mind, but there's also a huge amount of areas that we can prevent and so forth. So these I think that's and today's Alzheimer's Day is probably giving us a good opportunity to refocus. We are in the midst of a pandemic around the world, the rich country or the poor country, the developing. We're all having the same issue, and it is important that at this moment that we also have a chance to stop and reflect and think about Alzheimer's and the aged, particularly the dementias and what we in the bigger picture call the end of life issues that we'll face.
Well, thank you, sir. And moving on to Vidya, ma'am. Ma'am, you have been, of course, working with dementia for the last so many years, and you also run a daycare center for patients with dementia in Mumbai. What do you think are the main issues that come up when it comes to, say, looking after a patient with dementia? What would you tell the audience?
Firstly, I think challenges are in any field of life. We have to remember that persons living with dementia are as normal as you and I are. And the only thing is there is loss of memory because of degeneration of the neurons in the brain or of cognition. It doesn't mean that we treat them badly or that we cannot meet the challenges. I think it's very important to empathize with whatever you're faced with in handling them. There are times when the mood swings are too deep and too far and wide and interspersed with short duration. There can be a chance when they get kind of violent or they go on repeating the same thing, but it could just happen to you and me. Irrespective of age, I think we need to handle them with care like bone china, because they've given us so much in their youth or when they were requiring to give us so much. It's our turn to give them back by being patient with them and treating them the way we would have liked us to be treated by them had we been in their shoes. So there's no challenge we can't meet.
Right. Well, thank you, ma'am. Well, sir, since you did mention so many issues which are there, one of the things that I think I have always noticed in the last 10 years is that when it comes to the area of, say, dementia research, all over the world, yes, there are, I mean, centers that are carrying out research, but particularly in Asian countries and in countries like India, there is a scarcity of research when it comes to geriatric psychiatry and dementia. And what do you think, I mean, are probably the ethical reasons or the reasons for this scarcity of, even dementia services for that matter are lacking?
Well, that's actually a very good question because it is something that is very important. Now, one important thing that I see, or I am originally from India, but I've been in Australia for 40 odd years. But one of the things that I see differently here is that India has a large youth population in comparison to some of the Western countries, maybe. So, And when there is the issue of shortage, or for that matter, resource reduction in resource allocation and so forth, there tends to be certainly, and I come back to the issue of distributed justice. So the question is, you talked about research and about services and about, but I think there is research. This is probably because of one, there is some amount of discrimination. As you know, Article 11 of the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights clearly talks about non-discrimination and non-stigma. Now you could see that this is an important aspect that contributes in part to this, what you just said, the lack or the reduction. The same Article 10 of the Universal Declaration. Now, just for all of you here to know, you might be wondering, what am I talking about, the Universal Declaration? Very important to know that after a number of years of deliberation, in 2005, on the 19th of October, the world came together at the 33rd General Assembly of the United Nations and the UNESCO, and came out with what is called the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights. Okay, and this was adopted by 195 countries, and just even more important, that the government of India was on the executive of the UNESCO, who brought this out, and it was actually accepted by the whole world. And Article 10 relates to equity, equality, and justice. Again, will apply to what you just said. Article 11 reflects on non-discrimination and non-stigma. So, besides all the other areas of ethics and human rights, we have the other article. Again, one comes to the human dignity and human rights. So all these are directly related to what we are talking today, and today's Alzheimer's Day brings us together to give us an opportunity to reflect on this area, not only on the services, because it's all related. What type of service, what type of research, what type of treatments that are available. And we must also remember that Alzheimer's Day is an important day to also reflect on the carers. That's an important part, the carers and what the morbidity and so forth that goes there. And there's a lot of research being done even in Australia in terms of carers' burden, the care of carers, the cost to society that the carer is in Australia. They put this at a large amount of by the carers' contribution to the society, to public health and so forth.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Well, Vidya ma'am, since you have been, working with patients, could you tell us maybe one or two incidences which are heart touching for you with patients and carers?
I think every day is an experience, and they're teaching us lessons every day. But there's one particular one I remember when we just started the daycare about 5 years ago. There was this lady who was 79 then, and we were working 5-day week. And I think 6 weeks after we started, on a Saturday morning, she walked away from the home, and she was about 15 minutes walk from her residence to our center. And what she did was she walked away, and the daughter-in-law called me at 7:30 in the morning saying that mummy is not around. I don't know what's happened, where she's gone, and she broke down. So I told her to contain herself and calm down and tell her husband and son to go on their bikes, go in different directions and reach the center. Probably she's got it into her system and she's gone to the center. So for around 10 minutes later, we call her Mama. Mama was sitting on the stairs and she told her daughter-in-law, I think baby is not well. She's kept the school closed today. And that's when we realized that we were on track and we were doing things very nicely for them. And we decided that we open it 6 days a week. And 3 months later, we had another person who was professionally qualified as a doctorate in engineering and heading the university department of mechanical engineering. And he walked off, and he was about 45 minutes away from the center. And his wife is a doctor, and fortunately, she came straight to the center because we'd had that experience. That is one. And another one is, we celebrate festivals, we celebrate birthdays. And this last year, when we celebrated, this year, sorry, in 20, we celebrated Valentine's Day with a special lunch in the club that faces the seaside. And they were like children because we had the decorations done in red heart balloons and we had little tents put up. And they were back to square one, the old days. And even the families, we had invited the families to join us. And the families were so excited. They said, oh my God, this is like 25 years ago that they were there. And we realized that they feel they might have lost their memory, but they are very well alive inside. And we need to capture those moments for them by, empathizing, being in their shoes, and just loving them for what they are or have been, and probably loving them and doing whatever we can for them for what they can't and they are not.
Right. Well, sir, coming back to you, since we are on dementia, well, I think surely as a psychiatrist, medication wise, we have very little to offer dementia patients, and the condition is irreversible. There's also a lot of research going on into medications which would probably reverse dementia, or even the area of anti-aging has picked up in a very big way. So what I wanted to know from you, that is it right to reverse aging and to reverse dementia, or is it better that we let natural processes remain as they are?
Well, the issue here is there is a lot of research looking at aging, anti-aging, and so forth. But I don't think, we know that there is a genetic, when you look at dementia, there's a variety of dementias, the pre-senile dementias, the dementias, and the genetic ones, which are pretty much the pre-senile. So we certainly definitely need more research into identifying how we could, one, prevent if possible, but delay the other. But I'm not yet. We certainly would like to have a treatment, and there's many studies or many research companies and so forth are looking at treatments, but at the moment I think we are far from that. But I certainly do think that every effort should be there. Like every other pathology, we can't say that dementia per se, or Alzheimer's, or for that matter, the Lewy body or the PITS, or all the dementias are part of just aging. Some of them are pre-senile, some linked to some of them linked not only to genetics but to other toxins and so forth. So we certainly must continue to, just like every other pathology, we must be looking at how we could try to reverse this, or even prevent it, or treat it, in the terms of trying to get a cure for it. Yes.
So you had mentioned, something called, I think, distribution of care in, the equal rights to everything as far as the Universal Declaration went. I mean, are there instances you feel in medical practice or in clinical practice where distribution of care is uneven when it comes to patients with dementia?
Yes, that is what I said. This comes under Article 10 of justice, and where one form of justice is distributive justice, right? So when we are having a shortage of anything, and more the good, I mean, the most easy reference is more recently in the COVID times, we've had a shortage of not only protective care, but respirators and so forth. So the question then comes, you know, who do we give it to? And if you have to make a decision, that will age be one of the reasons not to give it, or so there is an issue here, but that's coming to an extreme where you have two lives, and whose life is more valuable. And I think that's a question that comes in here. How do we put a value? How do you say that this human being's life is less valuable than maybe an 18-year-old? And again, these are issues that are important, but on a bigger area would be, what about access to care, to treatment, to, if we have a certain amount of funding when we talk of public health or you talk of health per se, how much of that funding is being allocated for the dementia, or for that matter, Alzheimer's patients and so forth? Are they? Is there a reason why there is difference in funding? That comes back to this whole principle of justice and distributive justice and equity and equality. And what about access? That's you're talking about. What about, are you having enough clinics? Do you have enough beds? In the general, do you have enough infrastructure to care for the elderly, for not only for prevention but also for the management and so forth? So access. So I'm sure Madam Shenoy, Vidya Shenoy, you would probably be able to tell me better what access do staff, or the sorry, patients with Alzheimer's, or for that matter, any of the dementias, do they have equal access to get care, to get a treatment, to get attention in all the public system? I mean, I'm sure private hospitals will be there, but then the question comes: who is eligible for that and who can't get that? So, is access an issue, Madam Shenoy? Is that an issue that you have?
The thing is that the new National Health Mission that has come up with a government is a very exciting mission, because they are trying to make medical facilities available for all. Being on the mental health panel for the state of Maharashtra, we are very, very active. We have had all 36 districts covered for basic memory clinics. And now in the offing is services available for therapy, rehab, and medical checks that need to be done, the laboratory and whatever. So they have gone with a bang. So I think it's a matter of time that it will be accessible. And we have such a large population, and the disparity amongst economic disparity is very high. So I think they'll have to grade it out in a certain way, because people who are educated or well placed or economically sound would not like to go to a hospital, even if it's free, where there are below the poverty line persons coming for treatment. There's a social crack or a distance maintained. So I think we are getting there. Of course, private hospitals have easy access, but they also have easy access to your bank. You see? So that is what people cannot afford.
Yeah, but that's exactly what happens. So you get a disparity in terms of your access, you know. And
Access, yes.
I know it's difficult in a large population where I see that 90% of the funding in India is funded by themselves or by their insurance. Now, I live in Australia where it is a universal, health is a universal right, and so everything is funded by the state. But even in that situation, there could be a disparity, as Dr. Avinash was just asking. Even though it's funded there, there's always an issue about, even in a fully universal funded place, there is shortage, and that's why they're having a royal commission at the moment going on into, because of the issues that the aged care is having. There's a royal commission going, saying there, and the results so far have been quite disastrous in that they found so many mistakes. What they are suggesting a huge funding more needed in billions if it is to be of
Right.
human standard rights. Yeah.
Well, Shenoy ma'am, I have a question for you. Do you think that a number of patients with dementia are, deprived of care, meaning they're not taken to a doctor because people think, oh, this is anyway normal aging, and the awareness that dementia itself exists isn't there?
See, going by the numbers in India, right now we have 5.3 million people affected by dementia. With a large population as India has, I don't think these figures are the right expression of people living with dementia. Mainly because, there's social stigma involved. Culture, Culturally, I think we are reticent to even express that somebody has any mental health issue for fear of some daughter or son at a marriageable age, or they'll think that tomorrow they might call us mad. See, the way they acknowledge any mental health issue is bad enough, and Alzheimer's being a challenge to even manage at home financially and socially becomes a problem. So there is a lot of difficulty in handling a person. They won't go in for checks. And that's why what we are doing is we are doing a lot of awareness programs for people to have diagnosis done early. And once the diagnosis is done, we push them for early intervention, supplemented by non-pharmac therapies to, you know, expedite the quality of life and well-being, or so that the disease doesn't progress further and become a bigger challenge to the family. So yes, definitely the social stigma stops them from even going for a check and saying, oh, he or she is above 60 and this happens, it's all right. And lack of awareness, that's the main thing.
Right. Professor Russell, sir, a question for you is, since you have seen both sides of the story, meaning you've been visiting India and you've also been living in Australia, do you think more patients, I mean, with regard to dementia care in Australia versus India, do you think patients with the dementia in Australia are more often put into nursing homes or old age homes versus being looked after at home? Whereas in India, we generally have this cultural, I would say, obligation that we look after our parents at home, and putting them in an old age home is going to socially get us ostracization from others.
Oh, a very nice question that you ask. I come to India because I'm involved in a lot of work there. Probably last year must have come 5 or 6 times in the year, or more than that. In fact, spent more than half the time. But what I'm beginning to see from the time I left to now, there's a big change in India. Now I'm seeing that in Bangalore, in many of the places, we are seeing the families, they're putting into the nursing home or old age home or whatever. Something that I didn't know was there maybe 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Right. Now, there is that cultural issue in India that protects. But at the same time, there's also, it is difficult, and in a Western world, or at least in Australia, there is an important aspect of funding. So everyone has got a right they have to get that funding, and so it costs tremendously, and they're trying to reduce it. They're trying to make you pay for those who can, and so forth. But I, when I first came in 80 or so, I actually worked in some of the nursing homes, and my thoughts then were that the people, not all of them were demented, but there were people who were, who couldn't look after or were by themselves and so forth, and they had dementia wards and so forth. But I think what's happened, whether it's in Australia or in India, the fact is that the longer they're kept in their environment, in their homes and so forth, they're going to be functionally better. So what we are doing now in Australia is that they actually have funding where they are offering you funding to try and make you stay in your community, in your home, maybe even with your family. So there is a financial incentive to keep you away from coming into a home. Now, in India, I think that is a great. I'm not an. I haven't studied this fully, but certainly I think the longer you're kept in your home or in your family, you've got a lot of interaction, you get a lot of stimulation and so forth, which I found here. When I actually worked in the psychogeriatric team for some time many years ago, but I found that what was the difference was that patients in the home were given very good food, nutrition, hygiene, care, but they lacked very much social interaction, and so their function dropped. If they were kept stimulated, and I used to think about, when before I left, I had patients in India who, grandmothers were staying, even poor people, but they were stimulated because they had to fight with the grandchild to get the food, or something will get robbed. And I used to treat these, and I used to think they were continuously stimulated. But when you are made to sit and someone feeds you, and you lose, your interest in life, I think changes, and your function goes down. And we know very well that if you don't use it, you lose it, and that is one of the drawbacks. On the other hand, as Madam Chandra was saying, we have it here, but I'm sure there must be elder abuse also there when people are left to stay in the community, stay without, staying in families, particularly when there's issues to do with finance and so many other stresses that may come in. Certainly, I think the cultural, India does have that cultural aspect that cares, looks after, and even here, we do have many ethnic people who still keep their family, keep their parents or in their home, and try not, and very rarely they go only in the last stage or somewhere when they can't manage, they put them into the nursing home. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, sir. Vidya ma'am, you have visited a number of old age homes and a number of centers for dementia in India. I mean, what do you think is probably the one point that you see missing sometimes in these centers?
The human touch.
Okay.
People who work over there are employed as a means of subsistence. They're working because it's a job, and they mechanically go through the rounds. So what I think is that the first thing we need to do is overall our soft skills management for staff. You know, I
Right.
think that would go a very long way. And in this way, what happens is that people will get used to having to handle difficult persons. So I
Right.
think that is one thing. Cleanliness, hygiene. If they know I'm going for a check, everything is clean. So normally I don't let them know that I'm going, and I just go there. One is for inspecting, and two is to just find out for myself how good or bad they are. So when it comes to recommending a home for an inquiry that comes to us, we are sure that this place is worth it and not. But we just say this is the place you should check out, because tomorrow they'll come back and say, are you having a tie up with them? because you're recommending them? What is the vested interest you have? So normally, whenever we have information in our data bank, we make sure that we have had a personal check to know, so that whatever we speak, we are conscientiously doing our commitment properly and telling the right thing for the inquiry.
Right. This was to be a short 35 to 40-minute session on various aspects of awareness. We've covered quite a lot. Sir, before we end, what would be your final message to everyone on World Alzheimer's Day?
Well, my message will be, this is an important day to reflect and to give thought to the aging people who are aging, not just Alzheimer's but all the dementias. And I think human dignity. These are people who have cared, contributed to many people in their spread of life, and so we remind ourselves that human dignity, their dignity should be given importance, respect, and I think that is a key. If we take dignity and the human rights and dignity, then we see everything else, whether it means the confidential privacy, respecting autonomy, the access and the distributed justice, stigma, all this gets covered or gets attended to if we go back to the fundamental dignity being upheld of the human dignity, that these people, the population who are aging, who have dementia, who have Alzheimer's, they deserve human dignity, and we must respect that and ensure that at all times the dignity of these people are given due respect and due consideration in everything that we do.
Vidya ma'am, your last message before we go, and then I get a chance to say the final word after that. Yeah.
Okay. Before I give the last message, I also have to tell that another problem that we face in India is the finance. The care in old age homes is ridiculously prohibitive. And I think we need a lot of more institutions, public institutions, more than private, to have people make use of the facility besides the trained staff. The last message is that we have to remember that according to the 2018 report of Alzheimer's Disease International, every 3 seconds, somebody is developing dementia. And it's very frightful. Also, that the WHO has said that it's the diabetes of the brain. So keeping this in mind and looking at the family who looked after us when they could, we have to remember those who cannot remember and do our bit and see that they live whatever span of life is left for them. They live that life well, and we live our life with a clean conscience that we've done our better than the best.
Well, yes, that brings us to the end of our program on awareness. I'm sure, I think the Alzheimer's Related Disorders Society of India will look for further collaborations with the UNESCO chair in bioethics, probably working on ethical issues. Even maybe you could have a unit, maybe training, multiple things that could be done. And I'm here to take that forward for you. A very big thank you to Professor Dr. Russell D'Souza, who is I think so busy that I think every minute is very precious, but sir has taken time out of his very busy schedule to give us 45 minutes of very valuable time, even helped us with technical support, sir, and we are always very, very thankful to you for having joined us. And we just end the day by saying that, yes, it's a day where we will remember those who cannot remember and work towards better dementia care in the future. Thank you, and we can sign off now. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure, and I think very important.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.